On the one hand, represented by magic, mischief, and malice, and on the other hand, represented by cereal and soft cookies. Two sides of the same golden coin that is leprechauns. I am Jago Van Engel, and I like games. And today the game that we are talking about is Dungeons and Dragons, specifically a tricksy little FEY hailing from the Emerald Isle. But before we get into talking about leprechauns and how I feel we can make them better, we need to talk about Monster Week. Monster Week is an annual community event created and organized by Ginny D and Pointy Hat to bring together TTRPG creators on YouTube. This year's theme is FEY. When I heard about that at first, I was a little bit apprehensive. I don't usually feel like I vibe with FEY, mostly because my DMing style usually leans more towards big bombastic boss fights that you can get out of stuff like dragons or giants. And while I do have a deep love for whimsy, I feel like a good FEY creature should be played with more, mystery than I can usually manage. So, well, there is one FEY creature I absolutely love, and that is leprechauns. We got Darby O'Gill and the Little People on Netflix when I was young, back when the business model was mailing DVDs to people, for those who remember. I was absolutely entranced by all the secrecy, customs, and power housed in those little green. Later, as I got into D&D, the idea of leprechauns seemed like a perfect fit for the setting, and I remember one was a final boss of a one-shot that I ran for some friends in college. So when I saw the monster lists for Quest from the Infinite Staircase had an official stat block, I was so excited, only to see this. What in the Elves and the Shoemaker nonsense is this Keebler elf supposed to be? In all seriousness, I have kind of come to appreciate this version of the leprechaun more over time. So let's take a moment and look at his stat. So, this is the official stat block for the 5e leprechaun. I got it on 5e tools. And if I'm being honest, it's not awful. It's just not my idea of a leprechaun, if that makes sense. There are some fun little things in here. They're too hardworking. And hard work is not something that I associate with leprechauns. Leprechauns are rich, and they're sneaky. And this guy gets sneaky in a couple good ways. One of the big things that he has is a bonus action, not too dissimilar from a rogue's, where he can disengage or hide as a bonus action. Gives him some movement, it's not bad. He also gets invisibility as a spell he can cast, good for sneaking around, as well as mislead, which is a spell that I didn't know too much of, but essentially you make a illusion of yourself, you turn invisible, and you can leave the illusion and walk away. The other two things that I really liked about this are this Gift of Luck ability here, as well as the Astonishing Luck reaction. Now, anyone who knows anything about leprechauns knows that they are very closely tied to the idea of luck, almost as important to them as the pot of gold that they guard at the end of the rainbow. In the official Dungeons & Dragons leprechaun, the ability Astonishing Luck says when the leprechaun fails an ability check, attack roll, or saving throw, it can roll a new d20 and choose which roll to use, potentially turning the failure into a success. And I think that's a really fun way to play with the mechanics of the game and see how a creature can have luck sort of as a superpower. The other thing we associate with leprechauns, at least for me, is the idea of them granting wishes or other boons, and the official leprechaun has something similar to that as well. Their Gift of Luck ability essentially lets them bless another creature with this Astonishing Luck ability. So those are the good aspects of this leprechaun, and it is serviceable. I feel like this leprechaun is good for the lowest level of leprechaun society. The joke that I made about Keebler elves earlier isn't bad. It's not a bad way to think about a leprechaun. It's just not the whole story. So the official stat block is okay. It's good for Keebler elves. It's good if you want to use Lucky from the Lucky Charms stuff. They can get into and out of trouble and traps with mislead, with the invisibility, as well as having ways to be mischievous with the stealing from people or hiding. Their Cobbler's Hammer ability also like slows a creature, which in my mind is like you nail their shoe to the floor. Um, as well as one of their traits, the Reluctant Refusal, essentially builds in a concept of like a FEY bargain into the way the Leprechaun functions. Um, so the Reluctant Refusal aspect, if a creature offers the leprechaun a chance to partake in merriment or revelry, such as song or dance or a good meal. The leprechaun has to succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be charmed by them for 24 hours. And while charmed, the leprechaun partakes in the offering, treats the creature as a trusted friend, and seeks to defend it from harm. The charmed condition ends early if the creature or any of its allies damages the leprechaun, forces the leprechaun to make a saving throw, or steals from the leprechaun. So, that is also something that I really like, because the bargains, the figuring out the rules surrounding these creatures are also a really important aspect of the mythology. So, how to make them better, how to move away from the elves and the shoemaker, the Keebler elves, and even a little bit from Lucky and the Lucky Charms, and get more towards things like uh, if you've seen the Dungeon Soup episode, this leprechaun, or, of course, the absolutely classic Warwick Davis idea of a leprechaun, which the official stat block just doesn't really cut. To get closer to these, I have built not one, not two, but three different leprechaun stat blocks that I'm now going to show to you. The first of the leprechauns that I've built for your DMing pleasure is the Leprechaun Troubadour. A little bit more, not just mischievous, but like evil and malevolent. Selfish, money grubbing, defensive of their gold. These guys punch a little bit harder than the official Leprechaun, which is CR4. The Troubadour is built at CR11. It's not balanced perfectly, but it should be at least something interesting for more middling levels of play. The idea behind the way this leprechaun would function in a fight is mostly centered around the idea of curses. Spell-wise, they've got things like Hex and Bestow Curse. Essentially, if someone steals from them or messes with them, they are going to be met with a lot of magical resistance from this. I replaced the official Leprechaun's little dinky hammer with a claw attack, the idea that, like, the Troubadour is fighting tooth and nail to try and get back at you and defend their gold. I also gave them an ability here, which is Limited Wish. This should function similar to the actual Wish spell, but just dumbed down a little bit. Rather than being any spell of level 8, it's any spell of level 7. The gold value of a non-magical item they can create is reduced, and the idea essentially is that if someone does get the drop on the Troubadour, does get the upper hand, steals their gold, and it's like, hey, what are you going to give us in return for getting it back? This is their way to, like, bargain back with them, is this Limited Wish. For the traits, to kind of replace the official Leprechaun's idea of Reluctant Refusal, I have a handy-dandy little table here of folk banes. For anyone who is familiar with Vampire the Masquerade, it's kind of the idea that certain mythological creatures, there's many different stories about what their weaknesses are, and not all of those stories are true, and not all of those things are true for every different masquerade vampire that you meet. Functioning off of that same idea, I have some weaknesses that might apply to one of your leprechauns. Things like their magic doesn't function in the daytime, or they have to reciprocate a gift if it's given to them. Things like if they interact with salt or cold iron, it might harm them or disable their abilities. The table is a little D8 table, so depending on what you think is interesting, you could either roll or pick something. And I also said the way that Folkbane interacts with the leprechaun is kind of left up to the DM. I did keep the things that I like. The Trepidor still has the cunning action, the cunning trick bonus action, as well as the astonishing luck reaction to kind of signify the mischief they can get into, as well as the inherent luck that helps to protect them. But overall, I feel like this gets a little bit closer, not quite to Warwick Davis, but at least to like the dungeon soup level of the Leprechaun, where they have magic, they're dangerous, they're malicious, and you don't want to mess with them even if you're pretty powerful. Now, what if we're going beyond that? We're going into a more social idea of a leprechaun. If you've seen the hit Disney Channel movie, The Luck of the Irish, the idea of leprechauns as like clan or family leaders, almost like a general in an army. For that, I have created the Leprechaun Clanold, someone who is holding a position of power in a leprechaun clan. These guys are at CR 17, so definitely a lot stronger. And my idea for them was more of a leader who would be in the midst of the fight. A lot of their abilities have to do with assisting other warriors in battle, ostensibly other leprechauns. Uh, their attack, rather than being like a claw with a poisoned aspect to it, is a fighting cane. I was going to use the word shillelagh, but we've already got that as a spell in the game. Essentially, the idea behind this attack, which they can make 3 times as part of their multi-attack, is that a creature hit by it has their defenses lowered somewhat until the start of the Clanold's next turn. So maybe there's a paladin who's messing with your leprechaun clan leader, and they go and they just pummel them with their cane. The big armor class is reduced down, and then all the little leprechauns kind of swarm them. It's easier for them to be attacked. I also grabbed a version of the Bard's Bardic Inspiration as a bonus action for the Clanold. Just an extra d8 to give to one of the people working with the Clanold. Also, at this point, I did give them the ability to cast Wish once per day. Similar to the idea with the Trepidor that it is a reward or a bribe that they might offer to adventurers who are willing to parlay with them or help them in battle. Still only once per day, so not too crazy, but this is my idea of like the higher tier leprechaun. Now, when we go from very powerful leprechauns to creatures that are altering reality, like Warwick Davis and Leprechaun movies, or, of course, the GOAT, King Brian and Darby O'Gill and the Little People, for that we need a extremely powerful reality warping creature. And for that, I created the Leprechaun High King, or the Leprechaun Ardry. They are CR 23, so very, very strong. I made them tiny instead of small, kind of the idea that at that scale they're very, like, their existence in our reality doesn't necessarily reflect the power that they hold. I was tempted to go casting Wish at will. That felt like a little bit much. I did give them the ability to cast Creation at the 6th level at will, which means they can conjure things like thrones or weapons, taking material from the Shadowfell and forming it into physical things, kind of just at a whim. And I feel like that was a good way to reflect the strength of the magic that they have without giving them the ability to cast Wish at will. As far as their attacks, I can't really imagine someone like King Brian like going to fisticuffs. So for what they're doing in a fight, their attack is Curse the Bloodline. It's similar to the Contagion spell as far as like the save and the damage that it deals. I don't think it has it doesn't have all of the Rider effect. But the real Zigger ability that I gave to the High King is this right here, the Lord's Luck. Essentially, all leprechauns are lucky. They all have the Astonishing Luck ability, and if they fail something, there's a chance they might succeed it. The High King takes that a step further. The wording that I put on this, whenever the leprechaun makes a d20 test, it rolls 2 dice and takes the higher roll, similar to the idea of advantage, but specifically separate from it. If the roll has advantage, the leprechaun rolls 3 dice. If it has disadvantage, it only rolls 1. Essentially, the idea is that luck for the High King of the Leprechauns goes a step beyond what normal luck is for mortals. They're always operating at that higher level, similar to the idea of elven accuracy, but still operating at that higher level. Worst case scenario, they're only rolling 1 die, so they can fail, but it's very unusual. And I also did specify in this includes if an ability like Astonishing Luck allows the Ardry to use a new roll. So, in essence, coupling the Lord's Luck and the Astonishing Luck together, it is incredibly unlikely that the High King of the Leprechauns would ever fail an actual d20 roll that they are making. So, if you are fighting the High King of the Leprechauns, you're going to want to be using like attack rolls, and you don't want him to roll against your numbers because he will almost always succeed. And that is pretty much it. I feel like with these options, it definitely makes the leprechauns more flavorful. There's a lot more variety for the ways that they can manifest. Variety which I feel like helps to reflect the rich history and mythology of the leprechauns. So, with all that out of the way, I think this shows a way that leprechauns can be better in 5th edition. Thank you for tuning in. I have been Jago Von Engel. Thank you for your time. If you stop by here again, I look forward to seeing you. Have a great day.